Explosions and gunshots erupt in the Kenyan capital, sending office workers and hotel residents running for safety. The International Criminal Court acquits former Ivorian leader Laurent Gbagbo on all war crimes charges. And more than 600 people in Congo have contracted Ebola, but health workers may soon be able to cure those infected with the disease. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We begin tonight in East Africa, where a quiet, calm day in the Kenyan capital was shattered on Tuesday at 3:30 p.m. local time when explosions and gunfire suddenly rocked an upscale hotel and office complex in Nairobi. Witnesses are calling it a terrorist attack. Kenyan news organization says several people were killed in the attack, but there has not been confirmation from authorities. At least 4 were wounded at the Dusit D2 hotel located on Nairobi's Riverside Drive. VOA Somali Service reports that Somalia-based militant group Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility through an affiliated website. Plumes of smoke rose above the hotel and office complex as armed security and soldiers headed toward the gunfire. Other armed officers escorted stunned workers out of the area, many with their hands out. Some office workers climbed out of windows. At least one woman was reportedly shot in the leg and was carried to safety. Firefighters battled to extinguish several cars that were ablaze near the entrance of the hotel. Many of those who escaped from offices told Reuters that they had to leave colleagues behind, still huddled under their desks. Now, police have cordoned off the area, and the government spokesman Eric Kiraitha told VOA that security officers are conducting an operation to clear the complex. The attack comes one day after a Nairobi court said 3 suspects accused of aiding the 2013 attack on Nairobi's Westgate Mall was said to be put on trial. That attack, which killed at least 67 people, was carried out by Al-Shabaab. Now, the International Criminal Court judges on Tuesday acquitted former Ivorian leader Laurent Gbagbo of all war crimes charges and ordered his immediate release. Presiding Judge Chuno Tafuza says prosecutors failed to prove their case against Gbagbo and co-defendant Charles Blé Goudé, a close ally and former political youth leader who were ordered to be set free. Now, Gbagbo was the first former head of state to stand trial at the ICC. The former leader faced 4 counts of crimes against humanity, including murder, rape, persecution, and other inhumane acts during post-electoral violence in Ivory Coast between December 2010 and April 2011, when Gbagbo refused to accept defeat by rival Alassane Ouattara. Gbagbo, 73, and Goudé had been on trial since 2016 for war crimes allegedly committed under Gbagbo's leadership. The acquittal is a major setback for prosecutors who have lost other major cases in recent years. Now, to learn more about the implications of Gbagbo's release, Nyaka Lagoke, an analyst and professor of Pan-African Studies at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, joins me by phone. Professor, welcome to Africa 54.
Thanks, Vincent, for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Now, this is something that, in fact, Nyaka is on Skype from Pennsylvania. Good to see you. And first, your reaction to this, because it looks like it has been a long time coming as far as you're concerned.
Yes, we saw it coming, and I am content. I'm happy. I cannot fake it because it proves what Dr. King said, that the arc of the universe is long, but it always bends toward justice. It was injustice to put Gbagbo there after a crisis during which both sides, were involved, like in war crimes, and then the ICC decided to prosecute Gbagbo and to put him there for 7 years, and then now that the judges have decided that they need to drop the charges. I'm just happy.
So, Nyaka, the issue here is not that crimes were not committed, but as far as you're concerned, is the fact that only one side was being targeted for those crimes. Is that the case?
Yes. Yeah, of course there was a war. There was a war. Mr. Alassane Ouattara and Soro Guillaume they brought the war to Ivory Coast in 2002. They divided the country into 2000 from 2002 to 2010. And then when there was an election, and when Ouattara's warlords haven't disarmed, when Gbagbo and Ouattara said that both of them claimed victory, the United Nations and France, they backed the rebels against Gbagbo. And then after Gbagbo was captured on April 11, then all atrocities and crimes that were committed during the war, they said that he was the sole responsible. And this is something that I opposed yesterday, and today we've been vindicated by history and by the decision of the judges.
But some people still would say, how about justice for the victims of this war, whether it was perpetrated by both sides or whatever the case may be?
Yeah, of course. Mr. Ouattara and then people who backed him, they had a choice. Either, they do amnesty, general amnesty, and then they forgive and they pardon all crimes. Or if we want to go after a group, you have to go against all groups, right? So the victims in the war, they were not just Ouattara supporters, but most people were also victims, of the war, because Mr. Alassane Dramane Ouattara also committed even more crimes during the war. Let me give you an example. The single most atrocious crime, the single most atrocious incident in the war was the massacre of Diokwe committed by Mr. Ouattara's warlords. More than 1,000 people from the western part of the country they were killed by Ouattara's warlords. And the United Nations forces were there. And 7 years, they were adamant to go after Gbagbo, and then the ICC did not even want to open a case about that particular situation. So, to summarize, if you want to go after Gbagbo, go after Alassane Dramane Ouattara. You want to go after Blé Goudé, go after Soro Diop. If you want to go after Simon Gbagbo, go after Ouattara's wife, because, all of them, they were involved in the tragedy of the nation.
Well, I can say only well put, Nyaka. Thank you very much, as always, for your insights. Yeah. Well, that's Nyaka Lagoke. He's an analyst and professor of Pan-African Studies at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania. Now, the Democratic Republic of Congo's presidential election is over, but the fallout from this contentious poll is building. Several African bodies are calling for a recount, and the candidate who says he was cheated out of victory is challenging the official results in court. VOA's Anita Powell report from Pretoria.
The man who believes he was cheated of the Democratic Republic of Congo's presidency is appealing to a higher power. Opposition coalition leader Martin Fayulu, who was favored by polls to win the December 30th vote, filed to the Constitutional Court Saturday for a recount.
We have faith, and our faith is intact, undaunted, because the people have decided, and the will of the people will be realized. I'm a man of faith.
Congo's election body declared opposition leader Felix Tshisekedi provisional winner last week, sparking surprise and outrage after a chaotic and widely criticized poll. The Southern African Development Community, SADC, called for a recount of the vote and a government of national unity. Their call was supported late Sunday by another African bloc, the International Conference of the Great Lakes Region.
It is a departure from how they've handled other electoral crises in member states. It's also certainly a departure from some of the weaker statements that SADC has made on the DRC. It's really taken a very hands-off approach to this electoral crisis over the last 3 years. So it's a surprise. In terms of how effective it can be, I think we have some doubts.
The body in charge of declaring a recount, the Constitutional Court, is loyal to longtime President Joseph Kabila. Although Kabila is stepping down, analysts think he aims to play a dominant role behind the scenes when or if Tshisekedi takes office. The Electoral Commission announced the ruling Common Front for Congo, FCC party, led the parliamentary vote. That means the president-elect, who heads the Union for Democracy and Social Progress, UDPS party, may have some political struggles ahead.
If there is marriage between the FCC and UDPS, not to last for very long, it will be it's a marriage it's not a marriage by conviction, and that's a problem, and they will have serious tension.
Fayulu says he won't back down, but the Electoral Commission chief says Congo should prepare for Tshisekedi's inauguration.
The speech by the President of the Republic, all else being equal, will happen on the 22nd of January.
Before that can happen, court needs to decide: recount the vote or risk legitimacy by letting the results stand. Anita Powell, VOA News, Pretoria.
Life has come to a standstill in the Zimbabwean capital after violent protests over the government's announcement of a massive hike in fuel prices turned deadly. The streets of Harare were mostly empty Tuesday, with many businesses and schools closed after a three-day strike was called by the Zimbabwe Congress of Trade Unions in response to an intensifying economic crisis. Several people were killed Monday when police in Harare and Bulawayo fired live ammunition at protesters who threw rocks, burned tires, and blocked streets. The protests continued Tuesday. Authorities have not released an official death toll, but the Zimbabwe Association of Doctors for Human Rights tells the Associated Press that at least 5 people were killed in Monday's unrest. At least 200 people were arrested. Zimbabweans are angry over President Emmerson Mnangagwa's announcement last Saturday of a 150% rise in fuel prices. Mnangagwa on Monday defended the decision at the start of a 5-nation tour, telling reporters in Moscow his country is going through both political and economic reforms, and these do not come easily. The protests are the largest unrest in Zimbabwe since deadly post-election riots last August. For more on the protests in Zimbabwe, journalist Kudzai Shinabate joins me from Harare by phone. Good evening, Kudzai.
Good evening, how are you?
Fine. Now, first, we saw this protest from yesterday, confronted by the police, but today we're hearing about the army, actually, the soldiers being on the streets. How has that been, what has been the response there in Zimbabwe?
Well, the army has been in the streets and the helicopters have been hovering over Harare the whole of today. And this marks the first time the military has been deployed into the streets of Harare post the 1 August violence that characterized the post-election violence.
Now, from everything you're seeing there, are people about to relent, or does it look like the citizens are willing to confront even the armies when it comes to these protests?
Well, the protesters have been resilient. They have still been putting up barricades in order to stop anyone who wants to travel around or get into town or go to work. So this is their way of enforcing the stay away. But government in return as well has shut down the internet. So we are in a blackout. No one is communicating. No one knows what's happening in the next city or in the next neighborhood, unless if they are making calls. So the mobilization that the protesters were relying on is no longer effective. So
yeah,
from the looks of things, we might see the stay away ending in 3 days' time, which is tomorrow. Tomorrow will be third day. So Thursday, people should assume that the stay away is over and go back to work, given that the means of communication has been cut off.
Yes, now the President Mnangagwa is saying the country is going through a very difficult economic and political time. Do Zimbabweans seem to empathize with him? Do they understand that perhaps some of the problems are not of his doing, that he's trying his best?
Well, Zimbabweans don't feel the president is here to resolve the problems, especially with the increase of taxes that have come and the increase in internal debt, in domestic debt that came with this regime post the Robert Mugabe era.
Okay. So from all that you know is that things stay the same. Kudzai, we want to thank you very much. Journalist Kudzai Shinabate reporting from Harare. Now, for some insight on the attack in Nairobi today, Captain Simiyu Warunga, director of the African Center for Security and Strategic Studies, now joins me by phone from Nairobi. Good evening, Captain Warunga.
Good evening, Makore.
Yes, now we have already kind of reported a bit about what happened today, but we don't know more. What are you hearing about who is behind this attack and how it could happen in Nairobi in Westlands?
Okay, one thing I want to tell you, so far, even the police and ourselves who do this issue of analysis, we are not very sure about the people behind this attack. although Al-Shabaab has already declared that they're the ones behind this attack. We are told, because of the developing story, there are about 6 people who went inside the building, and we are told one of them was actually captured alive with some guns on him. And therefore, probably this is the guy who's going to shed more light on what has taken place. Now, Dusit is not exactly in Westlands per se. Dusit is a very complex, modern hotel come suites and offices area in Riverside as you go towards Westland. Mm-hmm. Now, to be very honest, we cannot understand how brave and courageous these terrorists can be to pick on a target like Dusit Hotel and Complex. Mm-hmm. But one, we know that if you go in, it's like a cul-de-sac. Coming out will only be the same entrance is the same exit that you come out of Dusit. And therefore, for them to have picked on Dusit, either we want to imagine these are suicide fellows who don't believe they'll come out, or they are so confident that they can attack this place and probably have an exit that we don't know.
Yes.
But because it's a developing story, maybe we shall get more information as we listen and as we discuss.
And as we wait for that information, Captain, as an expert in security, having gone through this kind of attacks in the past, Kenya has gone through so many devastating attacks. What does this tell us? I mean, where is Kenya failing to learn from the past? How is it that this can still happen?
Okay, 2 things I want to discuss on this one. One is how Kenya has reacted on this current attack, and the second one, whether we've learned as a country or not. One, I want to share with you the response time by the Kenya security forces was very impressive today. Number 2, we realize there's a lot of organization in what they are doing. They seem to be planning fairly well. We seem to see everything that we never saw, for example, in Westgate, already on the ground in terms of the triage area, in terms of medical, in terms of supplies. That one we can see. We're also seeing a very good showing in of incoming other security forces. We started with the current police. We got this special forces going in, the GSU, the record team, and now we have the GSU main team that is actually trying to cordon off the area. So in terms of how the operation is being done, it looks to be flowing very well. And that, to me, is a lesson learned from Westgate. We keep on listening, we keep on watching, and we keep on discussing. But I think this time, in terms of operational readiness, response time, and turnaround time, we seem to see very good organization from the Kenyan security forces.
Do you see any correlation with the release yesterday of that suspect from formerly suspect from the Westgate Mall attack?
We have not yet gotten much about these people apart from Al-Shabaab declaring that it is behind this. But I think as the story develops, now that one person has been captured, we are waiting for the Inspector General of Police to tell the country what is the latest. But so far, there's very little information we are picking, and I think we need to buy more time for us to discuss in detail what is emerging out of this attack. But one thing we are sure.
Thank you. Captain.
These are people who took...
Captain Werunga, I want to thank you very much. That's about it. Captain Simiyu Werunga is a Nairobi-based security analyst. We want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still ahead on Africa 54, health workers may soon be able to cure people with Ebola. But first, a look at Tuesday's headlines.
On Our Voices, we're talking about the news and issues you're talking about.
Sharing stories of development and growth across Africa, around the world, and in our lives. Topics that inform, empower,
and change the rules.
It's time for Our Voices.
With me, Haiti Adams Fitzpatrick.
And Hadiza Kiari.
And Ayan Bior.
And Orion Itangi Shaka.
It's time for Our Voices.
Could be French,
English,
Portuguese,
Bantu,
Arabic.
It is the beat.
The African beat that counts.
The beat does all the translations.
It cuts across all languages and gives us the understanding that this is the African beat.
It is so distinct
and adhesive.
It binds us together.
African Beat on the Voice of America. For more information, visit our website at www.voanews.com/AfricanBeat.
It's time for a health report. Joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Mudu with a look at technology and distractions. Lino.
Well, health experts are sounding the alarm on the constant use of some tech devices and the loss of attention. The experts say while technology has improved many aspects of modern life, such as more access to information and improved medical care, being overly connected can cause psychological issues, one of which is distraction and even depression. The United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says each day in the United States, approximately 9 people are killed and more than 1,000 are injured in crashes that are reported to involve a distracted driver. And distractions increasingly include sending a text message and talking on a cell phone. A 2017 study in the Journal of the Association for Consumer Research found that students as subjects who kept their smartphones on their desks rather than in a backpack or stashed in another room performed worse on tests of attention and cognitive processing. Joining us now from New York for more on the subject is Maggie Jackson, award-winning author and journalist known for her writings on social trends, particularly technology's impact on humanity. She recently released the book Distracted, Reclaiming Our Focus in a World of Lost Attention. Maggie, welcome to Africa 54.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You have conducted many research on the topic of technology and the impact on people, humans. Talk to us about some of your findings and some of you were told as far as talking to experts with regards to especially the psychological impact.
Yes, I think it's really important that we study more seriously the psychological and the physical impact of technology on our lives, particularly when it comes to distraction. And of course, on one extreme, as you mentioned in the opening, you have real risks to life and limb when we're distracted in the car or even in the train and the airplane. There are many stories about pilots in the air being distracted. People's reaction times are slowed down, and they take their eyes off the road. And so this is something that's being watched all over the world, distraction on the roads. But as well, I think we're beginning to understand some of the long-term, perhaps hidden effects creeping up on us about having smartphones and cell phones and devices of all kinds, portable devices, with us at all times. It shapes our environment. It shapes our cognition. Just for instance, it interrupts sleep. People check their phones 150 times a day on average in the United States. They're constantly jumping on and off their phones and back into their physical environment. They're interrupting their minds, and they're lower interrupted sleep or shortened sleep is very much related to issues like diabetes and anxiety and depression. So this is something that needs watching. But as well, just the mere idea of living an interrupted life and how that changes our workflow is also something that's very serious, a health matter. People are beginning to, people are beginning to understand the long-term effects.
And let's talk about perhaps some of the solutions. In your book, the last chapter, you talked about the gift of attention, a renaissance at hand. What do you mean by that? What are some of the steps that people can take?
Well, I think the important thing is that small steps do work. As we learn from work-life balance, or we're now learning from the new issue of digital well-being, just for a minute, taking a 1-minute tech break when you're in the middle of a project every 15 minutes actually boosts attention. So we don't have to take the digital detox for weeks at a time, but stepping away from the devices actually bolsters our ability to think, and that's really important. And then, of course, we have to draw boundaries about when and where we want to use these devices. So education about about driving and young people and sleep, etc., is important too.
Thank you, Maggie. We have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that was Maggie Jackson. She's a journalist and author of Distracted, Reclaiming Our Focus in a World of Lost Attention. Now to Congo. More than 600 people have contracted the Ebola virus, which has reclaimed close to 400 lives. The disease has been difficult to contain because of conflict in the region. Despite an effective vaccine, but now VOA's Carol Pearson reports health workers may soon be able to cure those with the disease.
The world cheered when a healthy baby girl was born to a mother who had recovered from Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo. 61% of those who get Ebola in this outbreak are likely to die, despite the best efforts of health workers armed with a vaccine and with techniques learned from an Ebola outbreak in West Africa that ended in 2016. So far, there's no one treatment that can cure people of the 3 deadly strains of Ebola, although after years of effort, that may be changing. An international team of scientists has developed a treatment that can cure the Zaire strain that's circulating in Congo and the 2 other deadly strains of the virus. What's more, the treatment requires just 1 injection. Thomas Geisbert headed up his part of the research at the University of Texas Medical Branch, where he's a professor of microbiology and immunology.
When an outbreak first happens, we don't know which strain caused that outbreak until cases start coming in and you start having people. At that point, you're going to have deaths. You're going to have people already dying, people very ill. And, once you know what that strain is, yes, you can have 1 bug, 1 drug, if you have those countermeasures available. The disadvantage of that is that, again, these drugs are extremely expensive to make.
With a universal treatment, time isn't lost determining which strain of the virus is circulating, and people can be treated immediately. What's more, countries where Ebola is likely to break out can stockpile the drug ahead of an outbreak. The goals now are to see if the dose can be lowered and still be effective, which would lower the price, and to start clinical trials to make sure the treatment is safe and effective in humans. The treatment may not be ready to help those with Ebola in Congo, but the promise is that countries affected by the virus could have the treatment at the ready to stop future outbreaks of this deadly disease.
Thanks for joining us. Good night.
And that's our show. We have a good night. See you tomorrow. What do you say?